Hello, everyone. I'm Justin Silverman of the New England First Amendment Coalition. Thank you for joining us for another 30-minute skills. For those joining us for the first time, welcome. These monthly lessons are a quick and efficient way to hone your reporting skills and build on your First Amendment knowledge. But they're also more than that. As those who join us every month already know, these lessons are a way for you to reconnect with a community of journalists, researchers, attorneys, and academics. To everyone, please use the chat to introduce yourself, showcase your own work, and connect with others. Also, make sure you register for our upcoming lessons, such as how to start your own podcast, how to create a nonprofit newsroom, and how to use the Signal messaging app. Registration links can be found at nefac.org. Previous 30-minute skills are available at nefac.org and on our YouTube channel, Five Freedoms. Today's presentation is about the basics of education reporting. It's supported in part by the estate of Gloria L. Negri. Gloria was a trailblazing journalist at the Boston Globe for more than 50 years. This program is part of her legacy of newsroom education and her lifelong commitment to local journalism. You can learn more about Gloria and all other NEFAC supporters at nefac.org/supporters. During today's presentation, I again encourage you to introduce yourself in the chat and share your own experiences and resources. You can also use the chat or the Q&A button to ask questions of our instructor, and we'll get to as many of those questions as possible. We have a lot to cover and not a lot of time, so let's get started. Megan, all yours.
Thanks, Justin, and hats off to Gloria Negri, a former colleague at the Boston Globe and an inspiration. Hello and welcome. This is a 30-minute skills segment on education reporting. I'm Meg Woolhouse, education editor at GBH News. This is a big beat that's changing even as I speak, so let's go. Ed reporters need a blend of journalistic skills, an understanding of the education landscape, and a deep sense of empathy. On top of that, there are complexities of education history and policy, and the need to stay aware of emerging trends. This is a broad overview because there are systems within systems for reporters to navigate. I'll offer up some reporting strategies and look at some of the challenges education reporters are likely to face. Then we might have time for a question or two. So where do we start? Keep on top of what's happening by reading up and following other ed reporters. Here are some recent stories highlighting issues that aren't going away anytime soon. On the left, a New York Times story looking at AI in schools. It raises the really key question, is technology the answer to a rise in student suicide? From the 74, you see that student enrollment declines often mean school closures. Are schools in your district closing? Are they closing equitably? Are families devastated? And finally, we see Chalkbeat offering another resource to reporters. This story looks at teacher turnover, burnout, and hiring, and how those issues remain a problem and how one super large school district is dealing with it and overcoming it. There are also persistent teacher shortages in math and science around the US, and many schools are struggling to meet diversity goals in their teaching force, even as studies find that it benefits student learning to be in a classroom with a teacher that looks like you. The US K-12 system is organized around the concept of local control. So we have a system of nearly 100,000 public schools operating generally under their own rules, policies, and values, and funding them through property taxes. Private and religious schools operate separately, although there are still state and federal requirements. Charter schools are publicly funded, but operate independently of school districts and their policies. And then there are also a growing number of students who are attending homeschool. You can see here with local control that there are pluses and minuses of the system that we use. One is that we have a lot of community engagement. Parents and families are encouraged to be a part of their school community, or at least they should be. On the downside, you can have districts with varying standards, varying curriculums, and different values. You might even see dramatic differences in what schools can offer because of their funding. It's also important for an education reporter to track down the key players on the beat. Just going to give you a really good example in Boston. This is Jean McGuire. She's a Boston legend and a key figure in the city's education and civil rights space. She's the first Black woman to sit on Boston's school committee, that was in the 70s, and went on to lead METCO, a desegregation program that sends city kids to schools in Boston's majority white suburbs. That program continues to this day. Now, Jean is in her 90s, and she's a huge resource because she understands school policy issues. She understands the history. She understands how the school system affects students of color in Boston. And she's understood that now for 4 or 5 decades, maybe longer. She's in her 90s, like I said, and a real treasure. Right now, we're also seeing federal oversight of schools come into question with changes in the dismantling of the U.S. Department of Education. It's a good time to ask whether your state can or will assume those responsibilities and what is lost in this process of dismantling the Department of Ed. You need to talk with people on all sides of an issue, and there are many places to go. The school committee and state board of ed meetings offer up public comment periods. You can ask for written remarks that are submitted by community members. It's also worthwhile to observe how much time is allocated for feedback at meetings, and even how that feedback is received by people in the district or people at the state level. Build your sources over time and understand that the currents and forces behind decision making can vary. But here are a few ideas for sources. You can see teachers, teachers' aides, unions, district leaders, administrators, principals are a key resource, school committee members, state board of education members, youth workers, and community organizers in the city or town where you live, as well as school counselors. They all have rich perspectives. When you dive in, know that it's a freewheeling beat with a lot of groups and individuals committed to the cause of education. My one note would be to stay aware of who is funding an organization. There's a big difference between an organization funded by, say, parents and family dues, and one that's funded through a political action committee or a foundation that may have an agenda. There's also all sorts of new parents groups like Moms for Liberty and FAIR that have sprouted up. Moms for Liberty in particular advocates against LGBTQ curricula, as well as LGBTQ student rights, race, and ethnicity, DEI, and mask mandates. There are nearly 300 chapters in the US, maybe more, and they also advocate for book bans. So if you were using some of their commentary, it would be important to make sure that you get all sides of the issues that you're covering. Most importantly, in the school landscape, students and parents, they're on the ground, they're the end consumers, and the people with the greatest stake in the educational system's effectiveness. This is a mom and daughter I spoke to about bullying a few years back. I just took a phone call to a student organizer, and suddenly I was in touch with a family and really learning a lot about what was happening inside that student's school. You can also harvest state and federal data, although some of this information is in limbo today. The U.S. Department of Education lost about half of its staff lawyers from the Office of Civil Rights in the Trump purging of the department. And the National Center for Education Statistics has been more or less dismantled under Trump. There are other alternatives here too, and you can see from the slide, you can go to the US Census Bureau, your State Department of Education, the Center for Disease Control, and you also find information available through universities and university research. Then there are large foundations like the Pew Trust and Brookings. The list goes on and on. You can see that will also offer up perspective and data that they call from various sources. There are clearly challenges on the education beat. Access to classrooms or inside a school can be difficult, if not impossible. Sometimes it's impossible for parents even to be in schools. On the bright side, I would say you have social media where you can be in better communication with parents and parents groups who are gaining bigger and bigger voice in what's going on in districts. Public records requests may or may not get responses. Uh, that's just part of the business, I think, now. But local officials are keenly aware that people are looking at a community's schools, their reputation, and putting a lot of pressure on reporters and districts and people involved to keep up the reputation of their community. On top of this, some issues in ed reporting are quite loaded, like mental health or gender identity. And it's important to move ethically and with a sense of sensitivity through the landscape as you're talking to people. One important and key thing I want to stress is the need to get parental or guardian permission when speaking with minors. No parent wants a surprise hearing their child quoted in a story or on the radio or on a YouTube presentation. There are still many windows into how schools operate and ways to get public information. I just want to outline a few of them here. School committee minutes, emails from official accounts, curricula, records related to lawsuits, teacher trainings, complaints, a school's budget and spending, grants, contracts, reports. You just have to stick with it and keep your focus on whatever your subject is. And resources will find their way to you, or you'll find your way to them, ideally. Here's a story, a Chalkbeat story that looked at contracts for computers. It might seem on the surface like getting a contract could be something quite boring, but clearly it's not dry in this story. And that's because it wasn't a story about a contract. It was a story about the people affected by that contract. You can see that the schools spent a lot of money on computers that never reached children. It also prompted a state inspector's report in Chicago that led public officials and everyone to better understand that there were millions of dollars in resources that were supposed to go to students that didn't. Next, here again, these are records about absenteeism that tell about half the story. This is an AP story on how schools have made slow progress on record absenteeism. I'll give you an example here in Massachusetts. Since 2019, the state's seen 72% rise in chronic absenteeism. That means that means that more students are missing more than 18 days of school a year. Where are these kids going and why are they missing school? Their coverage through the AP has been phenomenal on this. I would encourage you to read it and then bring those questions to your own district. It also raises the question, what can and should a school district do to turn this situation around? Situations involving parents and parent and district interaction are always interesting, and you'll find a lot of parents who want districts to do more. Here are a few other resources that can specifically help new education reporters. I wanted to also point out the Solutions Journalism Network is an amazing resource because in education, often we're covering the problems or what's missing in a district, and Solutions Journalism actually gives us a chance to cast a wider net and help people in districts expand their thinking or perhaps their programming because they find out about something that works. There's also the Investigative Reporters and Editors NICAR conference and the Education Writers Association, which has plenty of free programming and programming targeted to reporters covering all sorts of school districts with all sorts of resources for you to benefit from, and it's all free. So thank you very much. Good luck.
Meg, thank you so much for this lesson, and many thanks to everyone for joining us today. We provide these lessons as a public service to you, so please return the favor and encourage your colleagues and friends to join us each month. We have a lot to learn from each other, and I look forward to seeing you all again soon. On behalf of NEFAC, thank you for all you do, and we'll see you next month for our next 30-minute skills. Take care, everyone.